guests today, our alumni from IBM. I hope we will have interesting discussion about cloud, IBM Watson, machine learning today, because for a lot of people it's still some kind of mystery. Maybe we can demystify it today. And recently,
I've worked in the cloud for 5 years. So
yes.
It's still a mystery.
And recently, for example, we had a discussion. What is Watson? It's a supercomputer, a neural network, or what is that? So, Marcus, if you can introduce everyone.
So hello, I am Marcus Belvin, class of 2007, the Kenan Flagler full-time program. Worked at IBM before coming here, and then went back to IBM. Did a little bit in software engineering with my undergraduate degree in computer science. After finishing here, where I concentrated in marketing and entrepreneurship, went back to IBM in marketing, did a number of different roles there, and then moved into product management. Right now, I'm wrapping up a technical assistant role, which is kind of a business and technology leader program within the company for another Kenan Flagler grad, Mike Barrera, who was here earlier in the fall. We got him that presentation. So it's been great. I help kind of organize the speakers here because I don't actually work in their expertise areas around cognitive and machine learning. But as I learn alongside you all, I've been around the block a while probably, so I'll be back up to good. And we have an agenda where Paige is going to go first and Matt second.
So I graduated at the same time that Marcus did. I have also graduated from UNC twice as well. My undergrad was in math and computer science back in the day. And then after that, spent about 15 years as a serial entrepreneur in games, the gaming industry, video games, the games entertainment. Then after that, came here for my MBA, specialization in entrepreneurship. Wanted to learn more about accounting and going after VC funding. And then through strange means, through a case competition actually, ended up at IBM incubating our serious games program. They're using games to do more than entertainment. Nowadays, huge focus on the intersection of games and cognitive computing, and how is it that you can use Watson in order to really optimize engagement. So that's what I'll be talking to you more about.
My name is Matt Fabian. I went to James Madison University as an undergrad, and then started IBM in the year 2000. So I've been at IBM for 16 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. I did my executive MBA and graduated in 2010. I am not an executive yet. Still working my way up the chain. And I'm on my 4th or 5th career at IBM. One of the benefits of working at a 400,000 plus company is you can kind of move around and do different things. So I'm right now a program manager for our cloud, our social clouds, basically mail, instant messaging, email, blogs, that sort of thing. I'll discuss that more when we get my slides on the screen. You're going to hit it first? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So how many of you are familiar with Watson? One way, shape, or form? Somewhat, some of you. So Watson, our first iteration of Watson came out some years ago. It was this sort of big coming out party on Jeopardy. You guys are familiar with that story. And it's not a story that is especially unique in that every few years IBM takes on a huge grand challenge associated with artificial intelligence. I don't know if you guys remember when they came up with Deep Blue that competed against Grand Chess Master. Do you remember that? Yeah, so this was sort of the next iteration. And in essence, what this cognitive computing power allows you to do is it allows you to mine both structured and unstructured data sets in order to find patterns. Right, so imagine that you can take this form of AI, you can teach it just as you would a child in any particular kind of domain, right, and get it to recognize certain kinds of patterns so you can query it from then on out. That was the first initial rendition. Since then, there have been, this has been modularized, so there isn't this one Watson, there's now multiple Watson APIs that are available on IBM's cloud, okay? So imagine now, I mentioned both structured and unstructured data sets. So not only can it read in text from, let's say, Wikipedia, right, as it did on Jeopardy, but it can mine images. You can train it on images. So you can train it, for example, to recognize pictures of cancerous tumors and non-cancerous tumors, what they look like. You show it 50 images, right? And then 50 images of a positive, 50 images of a negative, and now it starts to learn, right? So in this case, which this is actually a true use case, we trained it on how to recognize when tumors are cancerous, and then created an application such that health practitioners might be able to use this on their mobile device, right? How is it that you can augment the way people do work? Now, beyond images, you can also do some other very interesting things, like you can give it speeches, and it will determine, based on the speech you upload, what the personality is of the person who wrote the speech. So we gave it Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and we gave it Trump's last speech at the Republican debate, right? So it's fascinating. All this is publicly available, by the way. If you want to, if you're curious, and you want to sort of see these two next to each other, it's really fascinating. So imagine being able to gauge, again, using not just written text, but also spoken text, because we've got the ability to recognize speech, to determine people's personality. Now go one step further. I can now mine things like social media feeds, including Twitter, Facebook, to determine what are people's tone, what's their emotion that they're expressing, whether they're using a word like I love, I hate, I'm angry, or not, right? So you're able to gauge sentiment, okay? So we've got personality, we've got sentiment, we've got the ability to train in certain kinds of dialogue or certain kinds of domains. Now, imagine also you can take different kinds of data sets, including data that's coming from sensory devices, right? So there's the whole Internet of Things, being able to aggregate that kind of data in order to be able to find different kinds of patterns. So this is where IBM is moving to, and we've placed a huge investment in this ability to not just have this one ginormous AI system, but these modular OpenStack API assets that developers around the world can plug into in order to make this stuff. So here's what I mean about engagement. So I'm going to give you some examples. In my intro, I talked about gaming and the intersection of games and cognitive computing and what you can do in terms of engagement. Not just employee engagement, customer engagement, citizen engagement, which is what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. So everything I just described to you, imagine now, the more information you can gather about people, the more you can start to tailor experiences that are highly customized and curated for them based on what they would find meaningful. So as an example, the very first time we did an intersection of Watson and fashion was with the Met Gala. Have you guys heard of this example? So, big fashion show out in New York City, the Met Gala. And we formed a relationship with Marchesa, the Marchesa brand. And they were coming out with a beautiful gown, right? And the gown had all these really cool flowers sewed into it with these LED lights. And the premise was we wanted to show, as people are tweeting about the Met Gala, based on what tone they're using, are they expressing joy, are they expressing happiness, are they annoyed because the traffic to the Met Gala in New York City is so bad? You know, whatever emotion they're expressing, this sentiment is aggregated and expressed on the dress. So the lights on the dress change color, the gown changes color based on how people are feeling. Now take this one step further into the realm of citizen engagement. We've had numerous discussions lately. In fact, last week I did a keynote with a big conference on 21st century citizen engagement out in Silicon Valley. It was called Engage the Bay. And the whole premise of the conference was, how do you reinvent how people work with government? How citizen engagement, right? How do you reinvent government 2.0? What does it look like? And so some of the ideas that came out of there, as I was talking about all these different kinds of capabilities, when you can this kind of information in order to be able to find insights as to how people are feeling about things. Imagine if you're driving into a city and you see something iconic about the city. Like, you know how you drive into Raleigh and you see sort of the side of the Civic Center, it's got that really cool oak tree that changes color? You know the one I mean? Yep. So imagine it's turned red, right? And there's actually a reason why it has turned red. Right? You can find out what are people tweeting about with regards to the city of Raleigh that's expressing this kind of an emotion. You see what I'm saying? So this kind of thing, even clothing, right? As I mentioned with the Met Gala dress, if somebody's got a San Jose t-shirt and suddenly it's glowing red, you know, what is it that people are expressing via Twitter and the city of San Jose that's sort of showing this kind of emotion? Using technology and this kind of insight in order to bring people together around things like social programs, okay, how they feel about things. Some other things that came out of citizen engagement and Watson as part of that conference, we had a big discussion about online harassment, right? And imagine using AI not only to flag when online harassment is happening, right? But also being able to create an algorithm so that if I'm managing a bunch of Facebook pages, or if I'm managing first-person shooter or game servers, I want to be able to create an algorithm such that I can be able to uniquely measure and then gate what people's toxicity score is when they come into my system, right? So a few months ago, Riot Games did this. Anybody know Riot Games? League of Legends? Okay, so they came out with a report on Gama Sutra that said that they noticed, or they had guessed, that a bunch of their employees were responsible for harassing customers in their own online game. Okay? So what they did was they used an artificial intelligence to flag when harassment was happening within the game. But then they went one step further and created an algorithm to determine a toxicity score. And they said, okay, those employees who have a high toxicity score on League of Legends, what is their behavior in the workplace? And you can imagine, you can guess, right? If you're going to be a jerk in the game, guess what? Big chance you're a jerk in the workplace too. So they started to relay as part of their HR, you know, if you have a high toxicity score, you're out. You don't lower this toxicity score, you're no longer an employee in games. And it's sort of, this idea has since scaled, and now there's a consortium of businesses, including Intel and IBM and others, as well as working with the White House, the Obama administration, to think about how to use technology in order to tackle this kind of major social problem. Does this make sense? Okay. Some other ideas. So back to image recognition in Watson. I'm doing a lot of really cool stuff now with makerspaces. Are you guys familiar with makerspaces? Yeah? Okay, so think of it, for those who don't know, kind of like these great labs that have access to, where you have access to robotics and sensor devices and sewing machines and 3D printers that can print in polymers or metals. I mean, these really cool kind of massive toy boxes, right? So we're bringing in Watson into these makerspaces in order to do cool stuff. So you should see my kitchen table right now. So I literally have, I've got Spheros, I've got droids, I've got, you know, Legos, I mean, all over the place. So we've been playing around a lot with drones in Watson. So we've trained Watson to be able to recognize when someone's roof has damage from hail, right? So you're flying a drone, it's able to see, oh, look at those shingles, okay, you know, it's able to assess, right? So you don't have to send somebody up on the roof in order to do that. So these kinds of things. We're also able to, we were at Marbles Museum, you know that museum? Downtown Raleigh? We were there, there was a big sort of tech expo, and we were there with our drones. And showing how to fly the drone with hand movements. So you go this way and it flies to the left, you go this way, it flies to the right. We've also started to play around with mind control devices. So there's these, have you heard of Emotive? Brainwave monitoring devices. These are really cool. We're seeing them more and more in the games industry, such that what we did was we hooked it up to Hungry Hippos. Remember that toy? So the way Hungry hungry hippos, you gotta press, sort of the lever to get it to eat the marbles. Well, with this, we attached, Raspberry Pis, and we had some Arduinos, and we connected it to the sensors on the mind control device. We actually took a Mind Flex, a used Mind Flex, so it's not like we spent a lot of money on this. And what we did was the only way to get your hungry hippo to eat the marbles was by keeping really calm. Like you have to be in like a semi-meditative state to play this game. But it's really cool. We were showing this off, and we've been working with a bunch of high schools and now middle schools who are sort of adding on to this idea. And now we're bringing it into Dell Children's Hospital, for kids who are going through chemo. How is it that they can sort of manage their stress with tricked out hungry hippos, right? But it's so cool, the kinds of things you can do with this technology. Again, beyond toys, beyond drones, we're doing some really cool stuff with conversation bots, right? So you've heard of what a conversation bot is?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Yes.
So imagine you've got your regular conversation bot where you're training it how to have a dialogue with you or with your customer. Imagine you take it one step further. It's assessing the tone of the person it's speaking to. It's assessing the personality, and now it's able to curate a custom conversation. I'm working with two startups. One is, the startup is led by the former chief of police for the city of New Orleans during Katrina, okay? And he's since left, and he's doing this studio where he's creating a disaster preparedness game for kids with Marvel Comics, okay? And the core IP for all of his tech is this empathetic conversation bot, right? So that if you're a kid and you're a 6-year-old and you're telling it, I'm really afraid of a fire, really afraid of fires, and this bot will be able to recognize, first of all, it's a 6-year-old who's talking to me, and now I'm going to curate. Showing fear, I'm going to start to curate a custom conversation based on what I know. Okay. Next example is there's a company that's based out of Connecticut, and they want to do a police mental wellness application with this concept of an empathetic conversation bot. So we went up for a design thinking workshop, and I was there with the chiefs of police for NYPD and for Sandy Hook. They were there too, right? And we were talking about just the suicide rates of police today. And what they were looking to do is they've come up with this really unique algorithm of what kinds of questions do you pose to people in order to determine when they're about to go into a trough of depression, okay? And how is it that you might be able to decipher whether someone has a truly adaptable and agile mind? So have you ever met somebody who, no matter what really awful things happen to them in their lives, they bounce back? There's something about them where they have that kind of mind. So they've got the ability to be able to gauge that, right? And also be able to coach people on how to have that kind of mental agility. So, but they didn't want to have an application where it just asks the cop the same thing every day, right? So, scale from 1 to 10, nobody wants to answer those, right? So imagine if instead, most cops coming out of the academy, they're wearing Fitbits. Imagine if I'm able to gauge, this policeman, for the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been sleeping at all. And in fact, though his behavior has really changed over time, typically he sleeps great, something about his sleep pattern has changed. Now I'm going to prompt a conversation based on what I know about him. Hey, Joey, I noticed the last couple weeks you haven't been sleeping well. What's up? You know what I mean? So this kind of information, how do I gather? I'm not just training a conversation bot to have a conversation, but I'm gathering information, tone, Internet of Things, from wearables, personality, et cetera, in order to curate something highly customized, highly engaging. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to pass it now to Matt.
My stuff is not as interesting. Do we have a clicker? Oh, this one? Oh, good. So I work on IBM Connections Cloud. It's our social, all of our social software in the cloud. Basically, where we sit in, we're software as a service. Social businesses is basically the play. are the locations that they have to date. They're constantly building new ones around the world. What we actually do is, can I do a project? So we have 3 major data centers, one in North America, where we service in Dallas and San Jose. Then we have a European data center, which is Amsterdam and Frankfurt, and then an Asia Pacific data center, which is out of Singapore and Tokyo. Security is certainly, we talked about the cloud and how potentially scary it is. Obviously, we try to assign various businesses to use our cloud, and we want to give them the peace of mind that their data is going to be safe and secure. So we have to go through all these various audits and compliances to at least have the paperwork for them to be understand that their data is not going to be lost or that sort of thing. So what is IBM Connections Cloud? So basically, I kind of mentioned, so mobile is a big piece. We do have files, we have wikis, we have IBM Docs, we have instant messaging and chat, we have meetings, communities, which is blogs, wikis. So profiles, basically everyone in IBM has a profile, something where you can search on expertise for a given person. And then obviously if your company buys in, you would have this feature as well, something that I use very often. Next, communities. Basically, my team has our own community where we get to put different information, documents, different wikis on how do we do certain things, kind of like a run book. So I'm in operations. Basically, if the website goes down, my phone will ring, whether it's 2 a.m. in the morning, which happened last night, or over the weekends, I mean, at any point. So the cloud has to be up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So files, basically, a place to, similar to Dropbox, a place to actually store information instead of sending emails with attachments, which takes up a lot of space. You want to put it somewhere where you can just put a link. File connectors, I do not know much about this one, other than a way to add something to your desktop, in this case, a Windows device, to be able to drag and drop certain files into the cloud. So IBM Chat, we do have video finally, which is interesting to see people that we kind of never saw in the past. Because I mean, IBM obviously being global, I mean, I work with people in India and China and Ireland. That's kind of the main 3, other than across the U.S. And you really don't see a person's face other than whatever profile picture that they put out. IBM meetings, in terms of some of the newer things that we're able to develop, stuff like Kubernetes, if that means anything.
Watson, for sure. Watson.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I'm currently in this role, so I worked in the cloud space for a while. Now I'm in systems group, kind of a hardware division traditionally. And one of the challenges IBM faces that born on the cloud providers like Amazon, Google, born after 2000, after they expanded out of email, is we have so much content, data, and customers that are running in-house in their data centers. To move these applications, these capabilities, these clients to the cloud is a much different challenge than if you actually were to spin off a new startup, design all your applications from the beginning on the cloud, and then expand those out. So while we're trying to do that, we're also facing some of the new technologies like containers. They just pop up overnight, right? And how does that change the mindset when all of your clients were using virtualization prior to this notion of a container that can scale out and scale up much more quickly than a virtualized image, right? So when you talk about differentiation, there are a few different angles to look at it from. And as Favor pointed out, with our R&D division coming out with new capabilities like Watson, what you'll see from IBM now is a lot of our artificial intelligence capabilities creating or becoming born on the cloud applications through Bluemix, that now you as a developer can go to Bluemix, leverage one of the Watson services that are out there, created a whole new application from that, and that application is running on the cloud by default, right? Because you create that application on the cloud using some of Watson's services. Amazon doesn't have an AI division yet. Microsoft is ramping up one very quickly, right? So you're seeing a bunch of vendors kind of go at it from a different angle. I mean, what we're doing is leveraging our expertise across the company in various different ways. Even the systems group capabilities, such as our Z systems, have a lot of built-in security aspects that are built into the system itself, like cryptography, various types of multi-factor authentication, that when you put one of those systems underneath the cloud that's being created, you automatically create a more secure environment than what some other cloud providers can offer at the moment. A lot of times you won't see that in the press just because it's not the whiz-bang nice things that you hear about, unless somebody gets hacked. You know, so security is a big topic on the next pages, on the next day's front page. So there are a few different ways that IBM is going about trying to differentiate in the market, realizing that cloud at this point is more market-driven than it is technology-driven. So we're trying to merge the two because we have a lot of innovative technologies.
Can you talk about how MBA students or in general KFBA students can get hands-on Watson technologies? Is there a channel? I know that there's a Watson Academy program and you have affiliations with certain universities, but I'm not sure if you have it with Kenan Flagler.
UNC Chapel Hill is a member of IBM's academic initiative. Everything we've described is completely free. And in fact, there's an app lab and a makerspace, or multiple makerspaces now at UNC Chapel Hill, which are getting tricked out with Watson and the cloud, Linux cloud. So we're actually embedding curriculum in the on-campus makerspaces, including how-tos on what I described with the drones, the wearables. We've got a TJ bot, which we're bringing in, so their own robot. So you've got access.
No, it's probably on main campus.
Yep.
I remember when I was here, I didn't go over to main campus.
I've been to the Makers Lab. I've been to the Makers Lab. I didn't get a chance to see Watson implementation in place, but I'm just curious how we as business school students can probably just log in on the App Store and try our hands out on some data that we have.
What you do is go through IBM's academic initiative
Right.
and log in with your .edu email address.
Okay.
And with that .edu, you get free access to the Lumix cloud that has those APIs and the services.
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is a much less technical question, but is there a place where you could just chat with Watson? Like if you watch the commercials, there's that box and some famous person is having a conversation. Does that exist? Like is that in IBM's room somewhere and you can just go talk to them?
Not even in an IBM room. It's all online. There's actually Watson demos for not just the Watson conversation ability, but just about everything I've described to you, even the image recognition, the conversation bot, the IoT stuff. There's demos where you can actually try it out yourself without coding anything. You can get the flavor.
You can upload the picture and Watson will say what it is in this picture.
Yeah, is this
Like
President Obama?
the
Yeah.
chair, table, person, like male person, female person, with this or that probability.
And there's more and more demos coming all the time. In fact, we're working on a kit that we're going to release around VR and Watson, which is going to be super cool.
So thank you for coming and having the session. About IBM Watson, it's amazing what you can do, but I can imagine that you have some boundaries about ethics and how it can influence some privacy in this stuff. So like you're saying, you're attending for the policeman and like he's sleeping, he's going out with his family, and he's wearing that all the time. And what are the lines that you said that you were not crossing, and how the industry is behaving about that?
IBM is a member of a morality and ethics board associated with AI, with Google, with Amazon, with Microsoft. So all the big tech companies have a consortium around this. And this is a very big issue that has a lot of focus. And right now it's very much opt-in, right? So, with, for example, the mental wellness app for police, it says, here's the kinds of things that, you please agree, you've got to accept that we're going to be monitoring and looking at this kind of stuff. But for the police in particular, in order to even get this to work, you've got to be able to say, your police chief isn't going to have access to this, or know that it's you, it's anonymized. You see what I'm saying? Because if I'm the chief of police and I know this cop over here, Joey, who hasn't been sleeping, is really in this trough of depression, why would he ever use his Fitbit or be truthful to an app, right? So the whole premise is, you've got to understand the culture before you go and deploy the app, and have a really good understanding as to sort of the mechanisms of how it would actually work for people to be truly engaged.
Just a follow-up question, sorry. And I was thinking, when Facebook launched, it had a privacy policy, and it changed through time. And it might happen too with this kind of technology. And how we can be sure that in the future our information will not be sold or be shared with companies for advertisement or this kind of stuff.
I think we need to look at legislation. And I don't know how closely you've been following the news, and I could go on and on about this with regards to sort of the political spectrum and what government has access to these days. But this is something we should all be very cognizant about. That's all I'm going to say. Marcus wants to say.
Yeah, I'm not going to get on that soapbox. One question I have, though, is the ethics course still taught here as part of the MBA program?
Yes.
Okay, that's good, because one of the things that's coming out is you're saying, often hidden behind the First Amendment, right to free speech. I'm saying a lack of ethics in general, right? And if you think back over history to how dynamite was originally created to help with mining, and then somebody found another reason or another purpose for it, right? That's going to happen with any new innovation, unfortunately. But if we continue to produce leaders like you all that go through the training, understand the value of not only the triple bottom line, which I think is still sustainable enterprise notions here, but also ethics in anything we do, it'll help corporations who have access to this innovation continue to use it to the best of their ability. For the right reasons. So making your day-to-day lives easier versus using it for some of the various reasons, right? So I urge you all, as you go off into you graduate and go off to your day jobs, take those lessons from the ethics course with you. It's definitely come in handy for me, and I'm sure my other colleagues, because you will be in some conversations with team members who didn't go through Kenan Flagler, didn't have that training.
Thanks.
Kind of like a 10-year, 20-year look out. I know Elon Musk has made some incendiary comments on artificial intelligence and where that's going. Working within that world and kind of looking long-term at the effect on kind of the world, where do you go with that?
How much time do we have? Seriously, this is like an hour-long talk.
Take your minute at a time.
With some other hands. So one of my big areas of focus has been education. And I'm a member of IBM's Academy of Technology, which is basically kind of like this group that helps relay trends on where it's seeing, like for example with AI, in order to help steer the company in certain directions. It's not just me, there's like a whole bunch of people, right? But with this vantage point and sort of seeing what's happening, not just with Watson and artificial intelligence and how it can be used to augment people's jobs and what they do and the kinds of skill sets they need, then you see things like automation, right? Did you read about Amazon Go? And now you don't need any grocery store clerks? And there's now robots that are showing up in McDonald's who are handling your orders. You've got the advent of autonomous vehicles, so now no more taxi drivers, no more truck drivers. So there goes your retail clerks, there goes your truck, right? So this completely changes the landscape of jobs and what's going to be available. And so now there are people who are really thinking like, oh my God, we've got to completely change what we're teaching in the classroom, right, in a big way, and really transform education in general, the culture of education. Now, there's a whole bunch of challenges associated with this, and I actually have some really great stories. So if you want, pull me aside afterwards, because I've really got this great story. But I think this education, even though we, and when I say we, I mean North Carolina, the United States of America, are not spending anywhere near as much money and investment as I think we should be in education. I think this has to change. This has to change. You can't just say, I'm going to put legislation which is going to stop automation, artificial intelligence, driverless vehicles. There's nothing you can do to stop that train. So you have to, at some point, we're going to have to address culture change, what is taught in schools in a very, very big way. This is something we're going to have to do really, really soon. And obviously,
I have a relating question. Having Adam here, so what advice can you give to an average student from our class to get like from the first data analytics class to like working on IBM Watson?
Is that for me? Is that for Adam?
It's for Adam and for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, my question was, and this is like the very ground level question, the way, so let's assume everyone in the room knows about linear regression, you know a little bit about like clustering, maybe classification trees, these types of things. Like, can you give us like a broad sketch of like how Watson works?
How Watson works in
Yeah,
general?
what's
The secret sauce.
I mean, you talked about NDAs, right? But this like.
In essence, it's a technology based on OpenStack, so it has open APIs, and as I mentioned, there isn't this one Watson. It's now sort of a brand more than anything else. It's this brand that is being stamped on multiple different kinds of modular APIs. So I don't know if that helps you, but the core essence is a system that has a basic way of being able to be taught, as I mentioned, patterns. And there's kits that come with it. And the kit basically says, okay, for example, for image recognition, just as I showed you earlier with the two pieces of paper, like I'm going to show you 50 positive, 50 negative, and now it's going to start to learn. In fact, we've gotten into a point where there's this one version of Watson, this one API called trade-off analytics. And what the games industry is starting to use it for is something called gameplay balancing. So this means that, you know, I've got this casual game. It's called Plight of the Zombie. So this is actually a real use case. And I want to serve up a level of the game that is neither too difficult nor too easy for the players, because I want the exact amount of tension, right? So we got it down to, it's about 35 lines of code with trade-off analytics and about 3 tries of the player in order for it to learn, here's where this person's skill set is and what they can handle and not handle. So those kinds of things, right, is what these different APIs can do.
But I think the other aspect of your Vino's question is, so if you all have your MBAs, right? So saying these are MBAs here, what should they be learning, right? And this is for me who's teaching them, and also for them who's like exploring, you know, what courses to take as electives and these kind of things. Like, should they get deep into the technology? Should they think about the strategy? Should they do both? Are there missing competencies that are needed in this world?
In my estimation, and mind you, I suspect you ask 100 IBMers, you're going to have 100 different answers potentially, right? In my estimation, there are people who are really great in the technology, but can't connect the dots. If I've got a head of transportation, head of a transportation company, and he's sort of scratching his head saying, oh, what can Watson do for me? You might have a technologist saying, and here's the technology and exactly what it can do, but not be able to connect the dots to transportation. So someone who can both sort of understand what the tech can do and then be able to relay it or have the vision for what it can do in specific kinds of industries. I think that's a big one. So, you know, both the business understanding, the business development acumen, but then being able to tie it to solutioning, I think is a big, big skill set that is needed. You guys?
I think expertise is, we're not looking for one specific person or one specific, we're looking for different, to bring everything together. You don't have to be an MBA to work under Watson. A lot of it is right place at the right time, or know the right person, or that sort of thing. And to dovetail on, IBM Connections Cloud will soon one day be known as Watson something. Watson is it's becoming a brand more than what it was 2-3 years ago with Jeopardy. So.
From my perspective, strategy is key. So I did marketing strategy and corporate strategy here, and even now I still use some of the game theory conversations, and as I hear some of the higher level executive conversations occur. And it really doesn't matter if you're in the Watson division, the cloud division, systems group, being able to understand the competitive forces that are going on around you in your market area and look at it from a strategic aspect, or if you're more technical, being able to look at all the data that we often point Watson at to try to make some heads or tails of, and be able to take that data and turn it into a strategy for a particular industry vertical like transportation or like finance, I think is key. So that strategic knowledge you can build here and kind of hone here will work for you wherever you end up going within a tech company and probably in many other industries.
I was in a session yesterday with our North Carolina senior exec. Her name is Fran O'Sullivan, and she answered this question beautifully. And I just remembered her answer, so I'll tell it to you. We were doing a cybersecurity camp for middle school girls all day yesterday, and she comes in for this sort of surprise visit. And they asked her the same question, and she said, what we're looking for are people who are executors, who say, I will get this done no matter what, but also people who are open in their thinking, flexible in their thinking, versus, this is all I know, this is all I'm interested in knowing, and this is all I'm interested in doing, versus being able to be flexible, because it's a constantly changing environment.
So you just spoke about the application of Watson in the financial services. What I understand in algo trading is all about recognizing data patterns, and this is what Watson fundamental is based on. Have you used Watson into algo trading and financial services?
Yeah. Including being able to recognize when fraud is happening. So that's a big one. There's other things too. We're working on a project where there was this research. This is all in research, mind you, so it's not like this news. But in East Asia, there was some groups that had done a study for people who had no credit score. And what they did was they were mining the credit score of people in their immediate social circle in order to give them sort of this pseudo credit score.
Yeah.
So we're taking kind of a step further. So for those who neither have a credit score nor an identity, like an ID, online ID, using something like blockchain in order to give them a unique ID, and then mining the credit scores of those around them in order to be able to give them banking services to those who don't currently have the ability to be banked. These are the kinds of things, the kinds of innovations which I think we'll be seeing more and more and more of the sort of social apps for good using this kind of tech.
Make sure you have good friends.
Exactly. Make sure you have good
Wait,
friends.
I want to make sure I can keep it. And one other thought on that point. This is where the strategy comes into play, because some industries are easier for us to point Watson at than others. If you think about financial services sector, you have static data, but most of the data people are aware of are investment trading, which is very real time. Well, when Watson was designed, it was designed to be pointed at journals and static data that's been sitting in place for a while, not necessarily to be able to ingest real-time data from various sources. We're working on that. That's where our research division and everything really comes into play. But for the static data, like the scenario Phaedra just mentioned, it's ready to go today, right? Let it ingest all these credit scores that have been sitting there maybe a week or two. As it gets to real time, you'll start to see investors, et cetera, start to use it in various ways.
One more use case for fintech. This was really cool, and I saw it out of Engage the Bay. Remember that the conference I was telling you about on Silicon Valley? This was the 6th year the city of San Jose has done budget balancing games, right? Budget balancing games, right? So I was asked to come and sort of moderate and arbitrate. And the way they were using Watson was as an empathetic conversation bot to moderate the budget balancing game. So imagine you've got a bunch of citizens, and this actually happened, right? A bunch of ambassadors at the table saying, okay, I'm going to shut off the street lights in these neighborhoods in order to save X amount of money to put it in this other program. And it isn't until the chief of police comes in that says, you shut off the street lights, the chance that your crime rate's going to go up in these neighborhoods is going to go up, right? And then they're sort of scratching their heads like, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But imagine you can train Watson in that historical data about that city, right? So that it's automated, right? I want to move money from here to here. Here's what happens historically. There's Watson sort of arbitrating and acting as a moderator.
So I have a quick question. We talked a little about like the applications that Watson have, but do you envision the Watson platform going to products such as the Google Home or the Amazon Echo?
I didn't hear the last part.
So do you envision the Watson platform to go into the product, to transition into products such as the Amazon Echo, the Google Home, or just...
Oh, transitioning.
Yeah.
Oh. It's an open environment. These are all open stack environments. So I could have something, an app hosted on Amazon that uses Watson. And I have to go.
And there's a toy that was designed, I cannot remember the name of it.
Cognitive?
Yeah, the cognitive
Cognitive.
toy that was designed, has been out for over a year, that does kind of that, kind of think of Amazon Echo for a 5-year-old, basically, right? It's already been out in the market, it's leveraging Watson capability inside of it. So with Google and Amazon and all these other vendors coming out with their own devices, leveraging similar Q&A type capabilities, IBM's been doing that. As we mentioned before, though, we tend to focus more on industry, and education is something IBM's always been passionate about. So that's kind of how we're going with partners to get to the market.
Thanks for being here. I went through the Consulting by Degrees program with IBM, and I have a lot of colleagues who now moved over to the Watson Group. And so I'm curious what they're up to, how they're engaging with clients, what their teams look like, and just what they're doing over there.
Which Watson group?
That's what all of their new studies.
At a research lab.
No,
Oh, they're in the...
I guess I'm just curious about how IBMers are engaging with clients on teams, like teams that we would join after graduating, and how they're using Watson with client engagement, and what those teams look like, and how that's working.
Typically, well, at least in my group, I'm part of a group now that's called Digital Business Group, DBG, and it's developer advocates. Okay, so what we do, the way I like to best engage with clients is through design thinking labs. And basically, what this is they'll come in with a specific kind of problem, and as part of this design thinking lab, have you had design thinking labs? Do they do these here?
They're available. They're electives in second year.
They're great. If you get a really good teacher who knows what they're doing, they're excellent. And they really uncover a lot of information about the organization. So you first start off doing persona work about the audience you're trying to go after, right? So what is it that motivates them? What are their pain points? Who are their communities of influence? Like you have to, it's not just demographic surface, you have to dig in really, really deep in order to understand the psychology of who your end audience is. And then based on those personas, you come up with very targeted journey maps. Or, how do you get them immediately hooked? How do you get them to become an ambassador to your application or what it is you're trying to create? And all of this gets fleshed out through the design thinking lab. And through that process, you can start to sort of make connections as to what kinds of needs they have, especially with regards to big data and custom curating experiences, right? And that's when we start to bring in those kinds of Watson services. So really being able to work with them on solutioning and sort of what's the base problem they're trying to solve, and then bringing in the technology to help them be able to make those kinds of connections. That's my preferred way of being able to work with customers.
I'll say, it seems like IBM's going all in on Watson, and it seems like it's the answer to every problem in the world. And it seems also that they're doing a lot of basically all the grunt work in terms of figuring out what capabilities are. Is there a lot of concern with second movers in terms of like Google or Microsoft coming in and kind of catching up to you and slotting in and kind of riding the coattails of you guys? And how do you guys combat that? And what are your thoughts on that?
That's fixed the game theory.
I've literally been doing that or thinking that way since going back in 2007, regardless of what group I'm in. So yes, and some companies have made a business off looking to see what IBM does and then literally taking our marketing message and changing it to the company on it. But at the end of the day, sometimes that whole notion of somebody copying you is a great form of flattery is true, right? And from IBM's perspective, we want there to be a move forward from a technology perspective. We know IBM's not going to be the one that ever innovates, right? But if we see a great innovation come out from another company, we think it's a good market where we can add additional value. We'll try to also get into that market and vice versa. So yes, we're already seeing new announcements. Microsoft literally overhauled their cloud division and tied in artificial intelligence and put a new head over it because they see some validity in this space. Not just from a Jeopardy game perspective, but now they're seeing our success in healthcare and our success in transportation logistics. Blockchain is also a new technology that just 2 or 3 years ago didn't exist. The notion of blockchain. Everyone was familiar with Bitcoin and it had a more of a nefarious use at that time. But now we're leveraging that same underlying capability to drive new efficiencies from anything that could be managed logistically. Not just shipping from a UPS or FedEx perspective, but also what we call provenance of diamonds, for example. Going from the mine through the distributors that cut them and into the stores and into consumers' hands, right? Making sure that that diamond is who it said it was when the person sold it to you. So you'll continue to see new innovations come out, not just from IBM, but from the industry overall. And we're always keeping our eyes open on the competition, hopefully, so we don't get boxed out of the space. But yeah, we kind of expect it.
And there's a lot of room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. For example, it takes time, it takes subject matter expertise to train Watson. So one of the things we're looking at is, can you use games to train Watson? Can you crowdsource through gameplay means of being able to train Watson on things like context, as an example. And there's all kinds of ways in which we can use that.
We have time for one more question.
I'm curious about some of the linguistic analytics and some of the applications of that. One of the more interesting areas that I've seen it is how the IBM Sports Insights group has worked with the Toronto Raptors to evaluate free agents to see if they'd be a good fit for their team. I'm curious what applications you see currently and kind of where you see it going.
You're talking about esports?
No, the actual professional Toronto Raptors NBA team.
Yep.
The IBM Sports.
But being able to optimize the teams in particular?
Well, not necessarily just in that context, but maybe more of the linguistic analytics, looking at social media posts and different kinds of things to see if a person might be a good fit on team, an employee might be a good fit for a particular business, kind of how you see that evolving.
We do have Watson being used in fantasy football applications that are now sort of bridging the gap from, that sort of virtual space to helping sports teams assemble and optimize their players. That's what you're referring to.
I guess more generally the concept of linguistic analytics and
The translation services. We're able to translate in numerous different languages through not just training Watson in things like basic communication or basic parlance vocabulary, but also in patent vocabulary. So for some languages, we went as deep as to be able to teach it in highly, highly technical terminology. It includes, the basics. You've got Arabic, you've got Chinese, French, Spanish, etc. You've got some Portuguese, but it's always something that continues to grow. The key is, again, training it. Especially if you want to be highly technical, depending on the kind of vocabulary that you're looking for.
So, thank you.
Thank you.